Hello and welcome to a midnight vlog, I guess. I'm not really sure what to talk about in this little blog, but I know that I wanted to do a sort of blog. Um, I want to explain my absence. So I am a developer who is not your typical developer. I suffer from a health issue. Well, I suffer from a couple of health issues technically. Um, but my main leading cause is my diabetes. I have neglected it for years, and it is a silent killer. Um, I let it go for many, many years, and as a result, I am now a very unique developer who cannot work. That's right. I am unfortunate enough to not be able to work. I've had a lot of fortune in my life and a lot of luck, but this is not one of the better things, in my opinion. Um, well, what it is let's step back. So I started out my life with somewhat of a normal-ish childhood. Was a curious little critter, ran around with friends, what little friends I had. Um, I was obsessed with computers. I was obsessed with how they worked. Sorry about that. I haven't had any coffee yet. I was a curious little tyke. I was always wondering how computers worked, what they, what makes them tick, what got it working. Because my family got their first computer in, I believe it was 97, and it was a Windows 95 thick thing. It was a little white, like a eggshell white monitor thing that was like that thick. Not even kidding, like front to back. Like it was a thick little projector based CT, whatever the heck it is, CRX. I forget old displays that you would probably call history now. Um, and when my family got the PC, I had I became fascinated with this one game on that computer. Well, two games, Solitaire and this ping pong game. You were like it's like Microsoft Ping Pong or something. You were like this little space age rock like ping pong game looking thing where you pull the lever and a ball shoots up and you shoot the little power powered power paddle things and you fire your ball back up and down. I was amazed at this little this computer. 'Cause TVs are cool. TVs are cool. Don't get me wrong. Like radio brought that voice in the box. TV brought that picture on your screen that made things that was like entertaining. And y'all got to remember this was the 90s. And like then this thing came along and it was a PC that it was a personal computer where I could literally use a mouse and move this thing around the screen and like I could type things and it was amazing to me. So I developed a deep interest in what is this magic box and how does it work. That led me down the self-taught journey of trying to figure out technology. And I would pick apart everything. Like I would physically take it apart to try to figure out. My parents didn't like it, but like I would pick things apart and I would wonder how they worked. How did this talk with this? How did this talk with that? How is it that I can type things here and things appear as I type? And where TV was cool because like it brought me this magical picture that was entertaining to watch and you could only watch it. And pause it if it was a movie. You remember VHSs? But like the computers and technology were always something that was interesting to me. And so when I went down this rabbit hole of how they worked, um, that obsessed me for a few years. And I was only a child. I was only very young at the time. And it wasn't until I was about 11 years old that I got introduced to what we'll call programming. Um, it was about, what was it, 2001, 2001-ish, 2002. I started messing with the terminal and with different languages, and I could learn that I could write stuff into a file, into a text file, and then rename it to a BAT, to a BAT file, which at the time I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I could write stuff to a terminal and it would print out. And then I discovered on the internet that I could write this thing called a BAT file, which I thought was cool because I thought it was Batman. Um, I was making these files that I literally thought were Batman files because it was the only thing I could relate it to because it was magic. And I would write these files and it would do things like it would query my network and I would be able to see the different devices that are on my home network and the different these and that. And I got into printing out and storing information, and then I realized I could do more interesting things with this terminal and what I just thought. And then I discovered um, I got into some of the Microsoft Office things at an early age, doing things like Visual Basic and doing some toying with some numbers and making spreadsheets so that if I added this and this, that number magically populated. And I was like, yes, things are working. I'm a programmer. And it was great times. The early 2000s were a great time to learn. It was a great experience, great learning, a lot of technology movements. And then around 2002 or so, um, I discovered this Java programming language, which at the time I think was also like still funny because it was debating on being named Oak. I think at the time, or no, that was in the '90s. Came along after that. No, no. Anyway, I came around Java 4. I think it was Java 4 was my first interaction with Java. Um, it was 2002, or late, or somewhere in the 2002 year that I started toying with it, and I got to learning about it, and I used to make one file. That was my file, main.java, and everything went in there. Oh my god, it was a mistake. Everything dumped in there, but it worked. Didn't matter. I was learning. Screw it. I didn't care what people thought. I didn't know what people thought. I didn't know what was right or wrong. I just knew that I wrote this file and it worked. And then I got into wondering, how can I make this better? And I started to learn a little bit more about the fact that Java was this object-oriented language. And at first, I first heard that term, and I was like, isn't everything object-oriented? Like, isn't everything an object, and isn't every? And so I really started to obsess, and the young kid in me started to spin the wheels and really obsess. What is object-oriented? What is an object? What is this? What is that? And my curiosity ran wild like a wildfire. Um, and so it just led into one thing after another, and I went through rabbit holes of languages and frameworks. I started out once I learned that I could not just have things print to the console and like take people's text from the console with the system scanner. Um, but once I had discovered that there was this side of things where I could make graphical interfaces. I mean, it was Swing, don't get me wrong, it was Java Swing, but it was beautiful in the 90s or in the 2000s, sorry, in the early 2000s. It was very cutting edge. It was very clean. It was easy. Um, at this point, I had recently discovered things like Notepad++, where things became color coded. That was a big jump. Like when I first started, it was just Notepad. So like when you missed a semicolon or you missed a brace or you had to wait until you ran that Java C compiler. Once you ran Java C and it spit out 100 errors because you missed one semicolon, you flipped the table, you got rage, you were mad, you were reading through files, and again, it wasn't an IDE, so you were literally reading through everything that you recently changed. There wasn't GitHub, you weren't able to retract, like you had to manually track that shit and remember, like, oh, this is the files I was editing today, and this is what I did today, and da 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 da. That was a painful time. It was a painful time. And then I discovered the IDE NetBrains. Was it NetBrains? No, NetBeans. NetBeans? Oh my god, it's been so long since I've used it. It's such an old IDE. It was one of the first Java IDEs that I've used. I do know other languages. I did dabble with other languages throughout my career and throughout my journey. Um, However, Java has always been the one that stuck with me. I've dabbled with, we'll get into that. Like once I started learning that I could write swing uh, things and I could write standalone applications. I thought I was great. I thought I was good to go. I could write these applications, and then I was like, oh, and then I learned that. Then I learned it wasn't after I was toying with it for a few years that I actually learned what it meant to run once, or sorry, write once, run everywhere. Um, so it wasn't until like a few years after toying with the stuff that I actually discovered and had access to a second computer. And then I was like, oh, what can I do on here that I couldn't do on there? And so I started writing applications and programs at home and then bringing them to school with me on a thumb drive, which a thumb drive back in the day, for those of you that weren't, they were bulky. They were bulky back in the day for very small storage. Um, it's kind of like how Lay's packs in a bunch of air. Big and bulky bags, big and bulky thumb drives, small storage. Um, but I realized I could start to take things and run them on other computers, and so then I started to show off to my friends about how I could make different applications and do this and that and make a window that we could click through. And there's nothing fancy. There was nothing like I didn't know databases and nothing persisted. Everything was just in memory. Everything. I wasn't saving things to JSON files just for like persistence. I was just letting them run in memory and then kill it when it was done because like I didn't care. It worked. It was a fun program. Nobody was going to get hurt. Um, and then I discovered that I could write some other types of programs, and that I could have one program talk to another. And then once I learned that one program could talk to another, I had to learn how to do that properly and how to do that effectively, so that I could. I then went down, and built a different. I built a sort of a texting app, if you will. It was like a way to communicate with other. There was a server, and then there was a client. Clients are the part that I gave out to other people. The server was the thing that I ran on a low end back end PC in my basement. Um, but it allowed other people to log in, so to speak. I was inspired by MSN. For those of you that are that old and remember what MSN was, I was highly inspired by MSN, so I wrote this little thing where you could log in, boom, you could chat with people. It was very bare bone basic. It was basically like a global chat room. Once you popped into the room, you could just talk, and everybody that was connected could see the messages. There was no private messages. There was no privacy. Just simply had a name, password, and then you could just throw messages out to the world. What a great time! What a wild, wild west. Now you get offended for that stuff. Um, I I continued down my journey and learned a lot about my programming and history, and I now know I now have a very good understanding of what software is, what it means, what it how it works. I am by no means a god. I am still learning this language myself. 20 years later, I still consider myself a student of the language. Um, Student of every language, technically. But I got really obsessive over Java, and I stuck with it, and I ran with it, and I got called kind of crazy for it. But whatever. I like Java. I like coffee. If you like this video, hit a like. Um, so after going through some more uh, programming journeys, I was pretty proud of myself for what I've done for as far as computers go and as far as technology goes. But I was raised in a way that I was encouraged to fail and encouraged to quit. Nothing that I ever did was good enough, no matter how smart I was, no matter how smart I felt, no matter what I did. Um, Nothing that I ever did for myself was ever good enough. And so I've struggled for years with mental health issues, with self esteem issues, with fitting in issues, feeling like I don't belong in any circle, feeling like I don't belong with anybody. And so after years and years of feeling like I don't belong and that I'm not good enough and that I'm not worth it and that this, that, and the other thing, um, I had some friends that I used to mentor over the years throughout the language encouraged me to start my YouTube channel here about reaching out and um, teaching other people tricks, tips, and experiences that I've had. Um, which is why this channel is built around real projects rather than tutorials, and why it's built around uh, aimed at developers who have an understanding rather than people who are trying to find their way. I do want to help those who are trying to find their way, but at the same time, I feel like there is such an already existing vast array of knowledge out there if you're just looking to start, um, versus if you are looking to venture further. Um, so for me, um, I never had that help growing up and like starting out with the career. So I always wanted to help other people, and so dating back to the whole I'm a unique developer, um, I can't work a typical job. Now that I have this skill set, now that I have all these abilities and capabilities, and now that I'm as well tuned as I am, I'm kind of a useless developer. So I suffer from, as I've explained before, diabetes. And as a part of my diabetes, in my early 20s, I lost the feeling in my legs because I never took care of my diabetes. I let it um, ride high. I'm Canadian, so for those of you that don't know the Canadian system of measuring diabetes, my A1C, or my average sugar for the 3 months, the 3 month average, my sugars are supposed to be around 7 to 7.6. Mine currently ride around 10 to 11. I used to ride into the high 20s. I've come a long way. I'm by no means good, but because of it, because of how long I've ignored my diabetes and ignored my health, um, I've actually done more damage than good to myself, and I wound up hurting myself. So I started in my early 20s. I began to lose the feeling in my legs. As of now, in my 30s, my mid 30s, I no longer have the feeling from the knee down. So if I was to put my hand just above my knee and then slowly move my hand down my leg, I will stop feeling it about 3 inches beneath my knee. I'll stop feeling anybody's hand that is touching my leg, and I have no feeling. So as a result, I re-taught myself how to walk in my young age, so that when I step on the ground, like step down, I actually feel a thud in my hip, so that I know that I've hit solid ground. And so like I've learned to cope with that. It's not a big issue. It was very painful when it happened, but no big issue. I don't run anywhere, obviously, as a result, because you don't want to see you don't want to see this 6'4" dude run and trip and fall on his face. It's happened numerous times. And then in my 30s, about the time I got to the end of my 20s, start of my 30s, about 5 years ago, I developed this stomach issue, and this was the thing that keeps me from working. Is I have what's known as gastroparesis. For those of you who don't know what that is and aren't currently Googling it, it is stomach paralysis. And basically, it's nerve damage of my stomach, so my brain doesn't get signals that my stomach is hungry. My brain doesn't get signals that my stomach is full. So I don't know if I'm hungry. I don't know if I overeat. Um, Thus, I have to live on a schedule. I have to eat on a fixed schedule. Um, my digestive tract, normally muscles kind of crimp and cramp and crunch, and they take care of all the work of digesting your food. Mine doesn't. So my digestive tract, I rely on some pills that I take before I eat a meal, so that they would more or less kickstart my stomach, if that makes sense. And so because of this, I am very, very limited on what I can eat, what I can't eat, what I shouldn't do. I make regular visits to the ER or the ICU. And by regular, I mean I could be perfectly fine and healthy today, and I could wake up in the middle of the night tonight after going to bed, vomiting so badly that I get dehydrated in a matter of moments, not hours. And then my sugars jump because everything gets condensed. My sugars spike. They go up into the high 20s, into the low 30s. I wind up at the hospital. I wind up in this thing called DKA, or diabetic ketoacidosis, when my ketones start to spike as well. And it becomes this very messy situation where I go from being perfectly fine and healthy one moment to absolutely written off. Where is Mike? Nobody's heard from him. He's in the ICU. It is a very difficult thing to live with. It's very stressful. Um, I live like 5 minutes away from a hospital, just specifically because I've been dealing with this. Not specifically because I've been dealing with it, but as a kind of a result of it. Um, it's uh, it's a difficult disease, and it makes my life as a developer very hard, because I can't search for work. I can't I can't go into the job field. I can't go looking for work. I have to freelance if I want to even go looking. Excuse me. I have to go freelancing if I even want to go looking for work. I have to do work is unfortunately an like, I literally have a doctor's note stating that I'm unable to work, which is very unfortunate for me, because I want to do nothing but work. I very much want to use my developer skills and work, um, which is why I am on here on YouTube. One of the things I've been recently working on is a living portfolio for developers to set up their own portfolio so that they can show off their skills, their time in the field, and all this. And um, I'm trying to build a way so that other developers can have a centralized spot for their resume, so to speak, their living portfolio. You can set up your work history, your skills, uh, projects that you've worked on. You can give descriptions, images, videos of that project. You can link it off to the project's website, the App Store, the GitHub, wherever you have it at, so that you can show it off. You can put all this into one central place and build your own living portfolio. You can create teams, you can create projects, you can invite team members or new people to a team. Um, there's a lot of stuff that I'm currently working on with it, but I'm trying to use what I know to help other developers in the field that has done so much for me. Um, so this blog has kind of been meant to tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about my history, and a little bit about where I disappear to from time to time. So for those of you who are subscribed to my channel and know me, this is where I wind up disappearing to. I make very frequent visits to the ER here in my hometown. The hospital staff is sadly very well known about me. I'm somewhat of a legend here, unfortunately, as that is. Um, yeah. So if you ever wonder where I am, I'm usually just in the hospital, or I'm sitting here in my little igloo writing code. And if you managed to make it through this long ass blog, thank you. This was just kind of meant to be a bit of a ramble. Um, I apologize for just kind of yapping on and going on, but if you are a developer like myself who is just trying to get by, honestly, that's all I'm trying to do is just help other developers, educate them on best practices, on tips, tricks, and whatnots, and um, yeah. Thank you very much for your time. If you've made it this far, it means a lot to me. If you would just hit that like button and let me know that you've made it this far. And this is not my typical type of video, but if you do want to be notified when I post some videos, by all means, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. And as always, keep your curiosity open, your skills sharp, and I'll catch you